Growing up, it wasn't the easiest. I was raised in a domestic violence home. My father struggled with alcoholism, and my mom struggled a little bit with like hoarding and messiness at the time. And obviously growing up in that kind of lifestyle, it wasn't easy. It was very chaotic and a lot of screaming, yelling, crying. And so in 8th grade, I got made fun of a lot for, I have a skin condition called eczema. So I was really made fun of for that. They would call me disease girl, rashy. What ended up happening is in 8th grade, my girlfriend and I were writing letters back and forth. And then what happened is one of the things that I said in the letter was that I wonder what the world would be like if I wasn't in it. And I didn't really think anything of it at the time. I just knew that I was sad and I was kind of questioning life and, my existence kind of thing. Am I important? And I told the girlfriend, throw the letter away, all that stuff. I actually saw her throw it away, but it turned out that she didn't. She took it seriously and turned it in to the principal, and then I got called to the principal's office. And what ended up happening there is that I saw my mother crying, and the principal was explaining that they found this note, and I knew I was in big trouble, and I knew why. And they took me to a counselor at the time, and he really helped. I was in 8th grade, so he just broke it down. He was like, pick something to live for in this moment. Things are going crazy, things are, really stressful. Pick something to live for. And at the time, I had 2 young cousins who were like babies, following me around, little ducks with their mother and stuff like that. And I just chose that because that just made sense to me at the time. And still growing up, I continued to struggle with the whole depression, suicide, and self-harm. With self-harm, I actually didn't harm myself physically until about my freshman year of college. And it was because I had gotten a bad grade on a paper. And I know some people might be like, what? That's so silly, whatever. Well, I showed it to parents and they were like, oh, it's okay, you'll do better. But in my head, in the depression state that I was in, I was like, no, this is horrible, this is bad, I need to punish myself. And that's kind of when the cutting began. And, at the time, I just struggled with it. I didn't really tell anybody that I was having, suicidal thoughts or, I was struggling with depression and couldn't get up out of bed and didn't really take care of myself, physically or anything. And it wasn't until probably in my undergraduate when I got into college a little bit more that I finally just realized I was having a breakdown because I just started crying and not being able to focus on anything and didn't really want to get out of bed and didn't want to eat. That I finally broke down and reached out to my mom and I was like, I'm not okay. I need help. I need a counselor. Therapy can be a good thing, but it also has to do a lot with your support systems. So growing up, I always repressed a lot of emotions, and I wouldn't reach out and tell somebody that I was struggling with something because I thought I had to be strong and not weak and not crying, or I didn't want to be called crazy or emotionally unstable or anything like that. But as I grew up, I learned that it's okay to reach out to people and tell them, hey, I'm not okay, I need help, I need somebody to talk to. And the interesting thing about everything that I've struggled with is that I've been able to talk to other friends who have struggled with the same kind of thing. If you struggle with something when it is a mental illness, you do have a choice and you can reach out to others and you can actually turn your negative into a positive and go and help others. So I was originally a journalism major and I had a lot of experience with that, but then I started kind of getting bored in classes and took my first psychology class, fell in love. And I specifically want to work with people with depression, suicide, self-harm. And then also my jobs, I work with special needs clients that have intellectual disabilities ranging from high functioning to low functioning. And I really have a passion for those 2 fields because I want people, especially if they struggle with depression, suicide, and self-harm, to know that they're not alone and that people that are in the mental health field or your cook or your baker or even your local bagger could be struggling with something that you're struggling with and you're not really alone. And my passion is just to show people that they're not alone, to help them realize that they can overcome depression and suicide and self-harm, but that it's a process and it just takes time, and not to beat yourself up if you're a year later and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about depression because this happened, or I'm thinking about suicide because this happened. You're human, you have feelings. So it's good to not repress those feelings and just, go talk to somebody. Therapy isn't as scary as some people might think. Or again, there's support groups like I talked about with Deep in Love. I mean, go to it. There's people that are struggling possibly with the same thing that you're struggling, or maybe thinking the same things that you could be thinking. And it's just, I firmly believe in support groups and, trying to build your support system. Even if, parents don't know what to do, they're always usually welcome to come to support groups and find resources. There's the National Suicide Hotline again. There's just so many things that are going on, that there's so many resources. Because when I was growing up, there was no talk about mental health, which didn't help with my feeling alone. And, there was no real awareness at that time. And now there is, and there's a lot of resources. More than anything, don't take it lightly. If they're struggling with something, don't take it lightly, because it can snowball. And even though it was only sprinkles of therapy here and there when I was little, it did help. It did help with the things that the psychologist would say to me, and the fact that somebody cared even enough to take it seriously. With self-harm too, I do want parents to know especially that a lot of parents can sometimes jump to the conclusion that, oh, self-harm could be, an attention thing. While I understand that that could be a possible factor, especially with somebody who used to be a self-harmer, there can be an attention thing, yes, but it can also be that maybe they're punishing themselves because they need to be perfect, which was my case. I know, we don't want to be a burden to people, and we don't want to bother people, or you're afraid of somebody's reaction for you telling them that, hey, I'm thinking about taking, my own life. I understand that's a very vulnerable thing, and it is. So be careful who you tell that to, of course. But just know that most of the time, there are methods of reaching out, and you can reach out to people. You're not alone as you might think you are, because especially whenever I've been in depression in the past, you feel like you're in this black cloud. And you feel like nobody cares, nobody's, watching out for you. It's not gonna matter if you're here or not here, and that's farther from the case. There's always somebody that cares about you, and, somebody that loves you, and, you're not alone. So I would definitely say to anybody that's struggling with that, reach out, just reach out. I mean, if you feel comfortable reaching out to, say, for instance, deepinlove.com and on the online chat forum, then you can do that. If you feel more comfortable, not going face-to-face in support groups, call the National Suicide Hotline. Again, it's anonymous. They're gonna stay on the phone with you. It's anonymous, nothing's gonna be recorded. Your phone number's not even recorded, nothing. So, different things like that. Know that there's resources out there for help. And there are times still that, like, I might have a day where it's really crappy, and you get in a funk and you're like, I don't want to talk to anybody, and I'm sad, and all that other stuff. Well, you know what, find out what you like. And when it comes to depression, if you like sports, do sports. If you like writing, write out your feelings. Nobody has to see it. You can write it on your laptop or iPad that people have nowadays. There are outlets to get that out. And again, if you are struggling with depression, suicide, or self-harm, reach out, number one, and then try to find some creative outlet to get that stress out. Because even as we get older and get into, adult life, adulting is hard, memes and stuff, it's really important to find out what distresses you, and people can help you with that. For instance, if I have like a really long week, because I go to school and I work 2 jobs, once Friday night hits, I'm eating like a big old pizza and having, a glass of wine at home and watching some Netflix, and that's my way of decompressing. If it's during the week, I listen to music, sing along. I don't care if I'm in my car just bopping along and being silly, whatever. If it works for me, then it works for me. So if anybody else is struggling with depression, suicide, or self-harm, reach out, number one, get help, and then, know that you're not alone, and then just find out, what are you into? Tailor that energy into it. So that would be my recommendation.